Years ago, I read a book. I think it was Juliet Schor's The Overworked American, although in some Marie Kondoing moment, I gave the book away. I'm pretty sure it was her, and she talked about this point in American history where there was an increase in industrialization, but particularly mechanization and efficiencies, all of which were making it possible for the American worker to get the same amount produced in a lot shorter time. And so there was this fear and articles written and public debate about the dangerous possibility of, quote, the problem of leisure. What would Americans do with all that leisure? And a bit of the fear, I'm sure, no doubt, was part of that baked-in Puritan-influenced culture that we all inherit, that worries that souls and idle hands would be up to no good with so much free time. And somewhat around the same time, also, there was this promise, too, that with it, invention of vacuum cleaners and dishwashers and all these modern American appliances becoming available, that women would be freed from so much housework. What would she do with all that free time? Neither reality materialized. There was no problem of leisure. It turns out that a vacuum cleaner didn't make things easier either. It turns out, raised the standards of what a clean floor or a clean carpet looked like. The standards of a good housewife just got inflated, as did the average work week. Perhaps as people decided that what they'd like was some more stuff, and so demand went up for production and desire to work those hours, and so on. Two examples of this ever-moving goalpost of enough. As Dave rightly named, enough isn't something that we Americans seem to get. It's something we struggle with, as he observed about himself. It's true for most of us that that word isn't easily in our vocabularies, this idea of enough. In 1997, filmmaker John DeGraff made a documentary entitled Affluenza. It was a surprise hit, and it was followed by a sequel, Escape from Affluenza, and a book that he co-wrote with two other authors on the topic, Expanded. All named, of course, for this imaginary virus that was where influenza and affluence met. The documentary framing itself as about this strange illness that was laying the body and soul of America low. It had symptoms like shopping fever and swollen expectations and community chills and industrial diarrhea. And chief among the causes was mistakenly confusing the good life with the goods life. All the piling up of stuff and the wrong trade-offs to secure that stuff. It was killing us, he said. And there were signs of our struggle all around, and there were ways to treat it too. And our planet and our children and our own joy and satisfaction were hanging in the balance. Simplification as a movement got a big push from the movie and its success, and right now is about the 25th anniversary of when the first documentary was starting to film. We know now, of course, with complete clarity that our consumption is choking the planet. Back then, the stat he used in one of the documentaries was that if everyone in the world lived the way the average American did, that we would need 3 more planets to sustain that lifestyle. I mean, that stat must be significantly higher now. And the truth remains, we still only have one planet, struggling to breathe. We know all of that. And as Henry David Thoreau once wrote, there's the risk that your possessions possess you, right? That you have to keep a job you don't like to pay for their upkeep or storage, that you lose sleep when they get broken or dented, or worrying about paying the bill for the fix of all that. Intellectually, we know that too. And we also know by now that our addiction to the rush of that momentary satisfaction from stuff is short-lived and Sisyphean and breeds another desire for another hit of those consumptive endorphins to keep us going. And how all of that desire, well, that it hides a deeper emptiness that we know can't be filled with toys or status symbols or even largely external accomplishment. We don't need a lot of stuff to be happy. We know the basics of what makes a person happy. We don't need to read about it. We just need to pay attention to the body and the spirit that knows when it feels deep satisfaction and joy, the kind that lasts. But somehow it isn't sinking in the not enoughness. It remains. Maybe, Dave, you hit the nail on the head when you pointed out how that idea is such an un-American concept. How unambitious it feels to talk that way about enough. As if ambition is measured in tons or in things you can buy, but not in the moments that the credit card ads call, rightly, priceless. I think it's true. I think enoughness isn't in our vocabulary, except as succor that we offer the less well-off or the loser's surrendered stance. I have enough. But we've lost the whole sense of what Sir Thomas Malory was getting at when he famously said, "Enough is as good as a feast." It is. Literally. Last Friday night, our daughter and our nephew out of the house, my husband and I went out for a date dinner. We treated ourselves. We had a main course each and an appetizer and 2 glasses of wine and a dessert. And on the way home, I realized I was incredibly uncomfortable because I'd eaten too much. It's funny, right, that our sense of a feast, if we think about it, is the sense of overflowing that demands and invites us to kind of shove it all in. But enough would have been much better that night than what I did. And I realize that's always the case, right? I mean, think about it. A fun party that goes on too late is just exhausting. And a great hike that goes on too long feels more like a death march. And even a back rub, if it goes on too long, it starts to hurt or chafe, right? But enough is perfect. It's like the sculptor who removes everything extraneous until what's left behind doesn't need anything more, when it's just perfection. What it's meant to be. But we don't normally, I don't think of enough that way. Fueled maybe by this consumption model that feeds our economic system and the messages that come out of it, they spill into so much else of what we do and how we think. And the cost of all of that isn't just indigestion after a night out at dinner, right? Here's an example. I have a daughter. She's a senior in high school. She's beginning the college process this year. Never has the culture of not enough shown up so regularly to me. First, there is the anxiety that the kids bring into the process that there is one college that will make you happy, make your life extraordinary. That despite all of the data that proves otherwise. Data. This, despite the fact that our country is one of the places that people flock to from all around the world for university education because we have such an abundance of options. This, despite the fact that if you pick up a rock right now and you throw it outside the doors of this church, you are likely to hit 2 institutions at least of learning that will give you a very, very respectable education. Among the middle class and upper middle class kids that I was and that I am watching, there's also a steady drumbeat of not enough in the entire process. There's fear that their grades are not high enough or their SAT scores, that their extracurriculars are not robust enough or their leadership or volunteer work, that their language skills are not as advanced as they might be, or they're not taking advanced enough mathematics. And where's the instrument they play, or the social justice cause that they led a rally for, or the social ill that they designed an app to fix? And parents and books talk about packaging your kid like they're a product, not a person, spinning their story to catch the eye of an admissions officer. And the sports camps or the outside teams that families run themselves ragged to go to or pay for so the kid can get into one of those athlete loopholes, if they're going for one of the real ones. Meanwhile, kids from families that are not college educated are feeling like they will never be enough too, right? Because they don't know the vocabulary around education and this process, because they don't have the money to attend or fear that they will struggle once they are in school, and the need to hide, they think, what they do not know and who they are not. All of these kids, no matter what their background, hearing in 1,000 ways, just in this process alone, that they are not enough. And it isn't new. I mean, sadly, I have been taken back 31 years ago into a place I locked away. I still remember the woman. I showed up at some alumni club in New York, and she was there with her ridiculous striped socks in the school colors of the college that she was interviewing me for. And she asked me what I did for extracurriculars, and I listed a couple. And then she asked me what else, and I listed a couple of other things I was interested in, which apparently wasn't enough because there was only one question. I remember her asking and asking and asking like a nightmare. What else? What else? What else? Never did that woman ask me, tell me what you love. Tell me what you love about being on the volleyball court or about your biology class. Tell me why you do it. How does it make you feel? What did you learn about yourself and the world as part of this? What are your hopes for life? Tell me about your family. What have they taught you? All I heard was that for her, the list of what I had done was not enough. And I remember leaving somewhat hollowed out by a person who saw only what I did and what was missing. Not enough. And for all the kids, think about it. I occupy an enormous number of places of privilege. Think about for all the kids who are non-white, who are not gender normative, who are not fully abled, who are not straight, who are not citizens, who are not all the things that we define as normative. For all the people, the weight is crushing. And all of us fighting to prove again and again that we are enough. It's not new, and it's apparently not going away easily. Which is why I feel like saying this morning that as religious people, as people who are determined to live lives of intention and meaning-making and transform ourselves, and by transforming ourselves, the world around us, I think we need to start intentionally reclaiming the spiritual practice and discipline in a world that is not in favor of it, apparently, of claiming and reclaiming and defining enough and the beauty and the perfection of enough as a fierce religious premise, as a creed, even. And we can begin with the simple questions that I asked Dave this morning, the ones I kind of wish that woman had asked me in that interview. What gives you joy? What fills you up? When in life, when you have it, when you do it, when you're in the presence of it, do you feel satisfied and whole? When is it that you know in your belly and your bones that you need or want nothing more than just that? Who makes you feel like enough? And then step into that with all your heart and soul, stubborn determination. Step into that and throw your arms around it. The spiritual truth told in so many stories and so many ways is that what we need, we already have, right? And who we are is enough. Dorothy's companions, they were already enough on the way to Oz. And the rabbi had what he needed right beneath his hearth and in the one standing on it. The world can use more justice, it can use more love, it can use more sharing of the resources that we already have. All of that is true. And I think with all the free time, the time that's freed up from overworking and overconsumption, or caring for our things, or trying to be enough and exhausting ourselves trying, I think with all that free time, we'd have time for all those other things that really need us plowing into them. And the real and inexhaustible heart for the work. So may we live into the truth of enough. And may that truth set us free. Amen.